Hi, everyone. This is Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build, where we speak with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes. Welcome to today's Fireside Chat. My guest today is Shawn Gulyas. Shawn exists to design and facilitate creative experiences that challenge one's thinking and action, helping individuals and companies find their authenticity and elevate their people touchpoints. After a 25-year leadership career in human resources, Shawn founded HumanWorks 8 to work with organizations in need of bringing their work to life through championing people. Think of Shawn as a jumpstarter of energy and ideas around the belief that everyone matters, and as a leader who creates cultures and communities where values, natural instincts, and well-being are the essence of success. Of the things Shawn believes in: peace, wonder, and my favorite, Yoda. Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm happy to have you here, Shawn.
Thanks, Curtis, for having me today.
Yeah, it's nice always to have a fellow music lover. You like me, have a long, rich history appreciating the arts.
It's something that helps me get to the next day, I always say. It's one of
Yeah.
the things I believe in as an escape and as a sort of a recharging. Definitely music and arts, theater, or something that keeps me going.
I kind of connect the two also because it's one of the very few things that actually really define being human. This artistic capability, right? The capacity to be or to enjoy or to appreciate or to create art. So it's kind of neat that you sort of revel in this human space. I think both in your personal time and also in your professional time.
Yeah, I
So,
second the motion. Any opportunity I get, or at the theater or listening to a concert.
so while I'm very excited to speak with you, I'm equally as excited to learn more about HumanWorks 8. You've created a fascinating organization so the audience can get up to speed. Tell us a little bit, give us a little background. What is HumanWorks 8?
Well, the best way to sort of put it really succinctly, Curtis, is say we're a team of people and culture experts with a really focused purpose. And what that is to build sustainable people practices in organizations that elevate people and culture. And that also impact then bottom line success. So that's what it's really, that sustainability to really help organizations look at people and the work they're doing as well as their culture, and then give it a lift, elevate it further.
As I've gotten to know you, I really feel that focus. It's like a laser-like focus on these things, and I can really appreciate all of that. Tell me more about the 8.
Yeah.
What are the 8, and where did they come from?
Exactly. That's always a good starting point with everybody we work with and we meet. Well, the 8 in our name, it comes from the team when first started. We're celebrating our 6th anniversary next month, but 6 years ago, just sort of looking, thanks for that silent applause, I love it, looking at our long history and experience with people. And that came from all of us, a lot of varying different roles. From, you mentioned my background in human resources, but I also have a background in theater and theater work. We have consultants on our team that have a public education background, marketing background, business development background, talent discovery and recruiting background. And in looking at all those experiences over many years, and then many of us working together for more than a decade, we found there are 8 truths about people. 8 truths.
Okay.
And then we found out, wow, that's kind of amazing. That's a cool number. And then we said, well, those 8 truths lead to 8 touch points in a business. And so that's really where our name came from, HumanWorks 8. And everything we do is based on those 8 truths. And I'll share them with you if you don't mind. How about that?
Please.
The first one's everyone's unique. Second is everyone believes. Everyone contributes. Everyone connects. Everyone learns, everyone rises, everyone thrives, and everyone matters. And when I say those, you may think I always challenge the people we work with saying, what are your beliefs around people? Because that's where everything starts as people leaders or as an organization. Our beliefs drive our actions, drive what we do. And so we make it very clear we have some beliefs, we have some truths about people, and everything we do work from those. And as I said, those 8 beliefs then lead to then what are those tangible business touch points that those 8 connect to?
Yeah.
So, for example, everyone's unique is around talent discovery and optimization, needed in a business, needed for strong cultures. Everyone believes is about having a strong strategic plan that aligns that belief up and down the organization. Everyone contributes, communication. Everyone connects, teamwork. Everyone learns, leadership development, growth of people in your organization. Everyone rises is around performance management and coaching. Everyone thrives is around workplace transitions, onboarding, offboarding, other things that happen, in changes in the
Yeah.
organization. And then finally, everyone matters is our focus in helping organizations around belonging, making people feel a part of it.
These are so one thing that I notice about them, all except the first are action verbs, which I love, especially when I talk to organizations. We talk about things like values. We talk about having that action verb is incredibly strong, but there's nothing on the other side of it. Uh,
Okay.
and so I'm curious when we talk about everybody believes, right? Everyone thrives. For a healthy culture, would it be accurate to say that everybody needs to believe and everybody needs to thrive and everybody needs to basically get on board with all of these things in order to have that healthy culture?
Yep, they're truths. It's
Yeah.
the truth. They have to be there, and different organizations may find some being having more of an opportunity in that area. Others may be really, doing really good work in that area. We help them sort of see them all, how they work together, as well as then help organizations to sort of create that roadmap on if they're really trying to look to elevate culture, which ones of these do they need to focus more on or elevate from? So, yep.
So, do you have a favorite or one that you care to highlight because it tends to be overlooked most?
Yeah, well, I think favorites are impossible, as far as that goes, because of course they all work together. You sort of said that. That's what a
Yeah.
culture is based on. So they all work together. But I will highlight one, and you already highlighted it. And that's why everyone's unique. And you said it wasn't action. Well, that's what makes it unique. Get the idea? So there's a play there
There you
as
go.
far as that goes. And I highlight it, Curtis, because it's one where I think, man, where I go when I ask about their belief system, they would say, well, I believe that, Shawn. I believe that truth too. And then I also say, but you can't handle that truth.
You
You can't. You can't. We can, human beings, our uniqueness between people, it's almost too much for our minds to get around.
Yeah.
And that's why we as human beings make judgments or group people and all that kind of stuff, because our minds really can't handle
Yeah.
how different you and I are on
It's
so many different levels. So that one is a critical one because we help organizations around all these touch points find a way in. And that's a critical word. And, it's more than just training, but you need to find your way into that truth and how you're
yeah.
going to handle it. And we have a great framework around the way into everyone's unique because we look at people across all 3 parts of their mind. And when I say that, people immediately go, "What? Wait, what? What is that?" And how we're not doing that. And it simplifies it very well. It's really just really having them understand that each of us have a cognitive part of our brain around expertise and knowledge. Each of us have an affective part of our brain around personality and values and beliefs. And then each of us have this cognitive part of our brain around if I have the freedom to take action my way, what's my natural way of taking action based on my instinct? So I highlight that one because I think that's really critical. And this day and age, when organizations are looking for ways to really elevate talent or find new talent, that 3 parts of the mind framework gives them a solid and a confident way into that truth.
My mind is my mind is going in a million places right now. You and I are going to have hours and hours of conversations after this. But number one, I love how that was intentionally done. That the unique one was actually unique compared to all of the other eight as well. So kudos to that. Um, it's really interesting on how you point out that our minds struggle to really handle that because that type of bias gets in the way of hiring. We tend to gravitate towards people that are like us or that we like. And generally speaking, a good hire is somebody who complements our strengths, not is the same as our strengths. And if we just hire people who are like us, a lot of times we're not going to get that 360 picture that we really need. You know, you made a comment about, you know, how difficult we tend to, you know, not your words, but the idea that tribalism, I think, can have such a negative effect on well, I mean, on just about anybody. Understanding that we're all unique, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for an organization is far too often overlooked. It destroys friendships, it destroys teams, it destroys companies, it destroys nations. And not to, but I love that you highlighted that one because in a sense, there are so many of the others that play off of that one,
Yeah.
right? Because we're going to thrive differently. Success looks different for everybody, and it's nonlinear, right? We belong differently, right? We all find our own way into the organization. We all are elevated in different ways, So love that. So I love that people are at the heart of all you do, and I sort of appreciate that values are the core of the business. What are Human Works 8 company values? How did you choose them? And then we can talk about the fun conversation we had about values when we first connected, right? And how you look for these things in the companies, but in the companies that you work with. But tell me about yours.
Well, exactly. We start with values even before any of that eight stuff. Values of an organization is our starting point. And whether that's an organization who already has value language, or whether it's an organization that hasn't really put energy or effort to sort of looking at, what are we about at the heart of the values that way. So, no matter, as I think I began with you, I want to know, what's Mustard Hub's values? I've got to know those. That's how I know about you a little bit that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's an easy answer from an organization. Sometimes that can be one of the challenging answers. And I always say, you have them. They're there. Okay, you may not have put energy or they're there because if you've had success as an organization,
Yeah.
that's coming from some values. That's where it starts. And I mentioned, our values, and when we look at that, we have a standard. They have to be gutsy, they have to be unique, and they have to be actionable. So you mentioned that action word. Everything we do is around action. So those are our three markers that we would, sort of give feedback on. And for Human Works 8, ours are champion people. And hopefully you've felt that a little bit even from me today. One is be authentic. You're going to get authentic me today. That's just the way, and that's going to happen. That's there. The third is elevate. And I probably have used that word, I don't know how many times even today. That's really what it's about. We don't start over with people or with organizations or with culture. We're always elevating from where you are, wherever that may be, whether that's a challenging place or whether that's a successful place. And we really believe that. And that really opens a lot of doors for us because people always think, people want to come in and start over. Or, no, you can't. You don't have time to start over.
Yeah.
You have to move from where you are. The fourth is wonder, wondering and questioning. I was just in a meeting with one of our clients yesterday, and they were amazed at all the questions I asked. And it's a really relatively new relationship, but they were kind of like, wow, you just came in and you just asked us some tough stuff, and
Yeah.
and we needed to be asked it. So that wondering is really important to me. And then the last one is breathe, and that's that whole thing about well-being. And
Mm.
just to really take a breath is so important, and really finding that balance as an individual, whether that's in work or in life.
Tell me more about what you mean by gutsy. I loved it when you said it, and I wanted to make sure I hung on to that because I want you to go a little deeper there.
Yeah, what I mean by gutsy, it's got to be, it's the truth, the true you. Okay, you can't hide it. You can't do your values what you want to be, something to the future. It's got to be. If I walk into Mustard Hub or to HumanWorks 8, I need to see. I need to feel in every interaction. The values should be right there. Okay. They're part of who you are from the gut, as far as that goes. And so that's what I mean by the word, that we use the word gutsy because it's sort of that living element of values. You know what I'm saying? It comes from human, it needs to be living. And so we really, when we work with organizations to listen and through our values discovery process, we really listen to the stories that are told, and we hear those gutsy moments of a company and where the truth and where that value really comes out. So that, does that help? Gutsy.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
like the
like that. And
blood.
you even pointed out that it's a hard question to answer. There's a lot of business owners who have never spent the time defining these things, and which I'm sure you've seen. I don't need to explain it to you, but the idea that your culture is going to exist whether you have chosen to define it or not. You can either work to, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for? You can design your culture intentionally, or it will get designed on its own. And you mentioned that if you found any success, it's generally because of some value. I would argue that even if there is some failure, it is also because of some of these things and some of those things that may have not been intentionally designed, right?
I would agree.
That's sometimes the bad side, right? If you don't intentionally design this and take these actionable steps that you're talking about, there are some negative things that might happen, that are, you can certainly tie back to and relate to culture. So I think that was a super important point, that like it exists whether you have the names for these things or you don't have the names for these things, which is why I appreciate you can walk into a room, start to have these conversations, and probably figure out pretty quickly what these values are, regardless of what they name it. You
Right.
have a pretty good idea of what it is.
What they are or what they aren't, as
That's
far as
right.
that goes. I always say, just by even the workspace, and just how people interact. And I always say, sometimes you get the values from the first person you meet in an organization. And that's why I like to spend a lot of time with that person. And I really make a really strong connection, because I said I really get the sense of an organization by that first person. And a lot of times I'm often surprised. Oh God, this person is the best. They're the best. But other times you wonder, okay, what's going on here at this organization with the, and my feeling is, how can I help this person? They need support. They
Yeah.
need something different. So
Well, that
definitely.
actually kind of brings me to this sort of next topic. I'm curious to talk a little bit about the clients who come to HumanWorks 8. Who are they? Well, we don't need to name names, but tell me a little bit about them. What are the challenges they face that bring them to you? What are the problems that your team is obsessed with solving for them specifically? And maybe those are different things. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we run the gamut. Let me tell you that. So it's not like I said, we are very focused on what we do, but that focus and the actions we take to help organizations really can apply to we work with startups to 100-year-old companies. Do you know what I'm saying?
Really?
So when you think about that, it really runs the gamut. But the bottom line is, somebody is thinking, okay, we need to focus more on people, or we want to be, you use the word, intentional about actions we take. We've done a lot of stuff, but is there someone that can help us focus that? So, and that could be teams. We've worked with teams of 10 to teams of hundreds to thousands, so it varies as
Okay.
far as numbers of people we work with. And then the gamut too runs from for-profit, and we work with a lot of nonprofits. So that's sometimes interesting to people as well, is that, but when it makes sense, for-profits really need that people element, and nonprofits kind of have that value drive almost built in a lot of times as far as the focus on people. And then again, all across the US. We do work with organizations that have offices overseas, but across the US that way. So you mentioned why would they come? Any of these organizations come to us? Well, the challenge, people are challenging, and that's sort of the bottom line. Let me tell you, I'm a challenge. You're a challenge. Hey, people are challenging, so they're looking like how to engage better, how to think well about their team, how to optimize talents, are some of the things, and the connection too is they want to focus on people, but sometimes they don't see that line. How does it impact bottom line? Because they need to think that way too.
Right.
And that's why I
Which
said,
was a question that I kind of I had around these, because all those other things are sort of are nebulous in a sense, right? They're
yes,
important because you want things to be nice, but how do you try it back to the business goals?
exactly. And that's why, on those 8 touch points, those are business, bottom line impact areas of a business as far as that goes. So, we want to do that. And then they're trying to solve something. Maybe they're trying to solve, everybody's focused on these values. We need to bring ours to life, trying to solve this value topic. A thing we do a lot with is we run with a lot of organizations that are just trying to simplify and clarify their strategic plans so that we can get that everyone believing together and really seeing their line of sight. And we're really strong in that area. Some organizations we work with is all around just talent, how to find right fit talent for roles using that 3 parts of the mind framework that way, giving them more confidence in hiring decisions. And then that confidence leads to people staying, you know what I'm saying? Because they have that right fit based on all 3 parts of the mind. And then, another probably thing they want solved is developing leaders for what's happening today, leading people and in the challenging environment we're in. We care about these things. They see that caring, and we want to tie it back to sort of elevating what they're doing around those. So again, kind of a gamut. I would say, the challenges or what they're asking to solve, much more focused, but the type of business, everybody, whether you're a startup or whether you've been around 100 years, people are always a challenge. And we focus in on some of those people needs.
I want to go back to one of the things. So we've already established sort of this idea that everybody is unique, which I love. The believe piece, to me, it was second in line, but also affects everything downstream.
Exactly.
And you had mentioned that about my words, sort of rallying the troops. How do you go about doing that with an organization that has hundreds or thousands of people? Is that part of some of the things you do with organizations to strategically find ways to get everybody on board? Is it messaging? Is it meetings? Is it some other kind of culture development? What goes into that?
Around that, everyone believes in sort of putting it in business language, strategic planning. That's critical for what you were saying, sort of rallying the troops. And what we find and what we push back on, our discovery process is sort of, hey, we need to discover, what are you doing now? And that now could look like a lot of different ways. It could be we're doing nothing. Okay. Or it could be 36 to 52 PowerPoint slides. Okay. As far as, and both are madness, in my opinion, both of those things. I think you have to find that really sort of middle ground of clarity and simplicity around that. And we really help starting, and it has to start really with the executive leadership team, the highest level leadership team. And we really push them to get behind 2 things: a strong vision. And there's a lot of elements that make up what a vision of an organization is. Anything, but where it starts with is values. So if they don't have values, we can't go any further. We've got to get those. That's the foundation of your vision. And that could lead to anything sort of having a picture of the future. We focus on probably a 3 to 5 year picture that we're trying to create in this day and age. Even 5 years sometimes gets a little bit sort of obtuse and out there, but 3 years, you can sort of see what's ahead that way. So
Yeah.
really getting clarity around the vision for that everyone believes, because you have to paint that picture for everybody, and everybody needs to see themselves in that picture. And then really turning that into a simplified way to create what are we looking at, based on a business's, workflow in a year or quarters or whatever element they set up, to really simplifying that so everybody knows, okay, here's what organizationally what we're doing in the next year, here's what we're doing over quarterly, and then everybody's sort of seeing their line of sight up there. You know, I always say, there's so many strategic planning methodologies and everything up there. We've created our own. We call it the way. So it'd be like the Mustard Hub way, the Human Works 8 way. You need to build your unique approach to that, but it does need to have a vision, does need to have action, and everything you do in it, it's not about wordsmithing it or trying to say everything. It's really getting to that simplicity and
Yeah.
clarity around both elements. Does that help, Curtis? That's sort
Oh
of
my
my.
God. Yeah, tremendously. I keep thinking about, you know, everybody sort of understanding the vision and having a clear understanding of the strategic plan is ultimately what, like I said, it affects everything downstream. A leader's learning and development. How you elevate your talent. All of these things are done through the lens of that vision and your strategic plan. If right, I mean, without those things, how do you know what you're developing talent for?
Yeah.
And so I love that. And yes, it makes 100% sense. And so I think it all starts with really understanding people, right? And leaders, I think, just getting humans and how they work, their uniqueness, right? All understanding on the same page about what the organization does, how we're doing it, how we're providing value, how we're going to be providing value in the future. What are the consequences for an organization when leadership just isn't aligned with their workforce?
Yeah. Well,
I would
a lot.
imagine that's one of these problems you see when folks come to you, is there is that sort of divide.
It does happen. Here's what I would say when it comes to alignment. When I think of alignment, sometimes people say, well, leaders don't get it. To me, those are very cognitive kind of things. Okay. And people leaders don't start with cognitive. So I always push back and say, you can say that, but it's not about making your leaders smarter
Yeah.
or teaching them something. If you have somebody in a people leader role, the bottom line, that starts with the affective part of our brains, actually, how we feel or how we care about people. And I always ask the question, Curtis, I would say, hey, this person, you have a challenge, do they care about people? And of course, the answer, always give a yes or no answer. They're going to say, yes, of course. Or if you even ask that person directly, yes, I care about people. But you have to take it just sort of a step higher than that and sort of say, well, where did your caring elevate that person's life at work or at home? And that's where that people leader's eyes sort of go, that's my job if I'm in a people leader role. You get the idea? And that's what builds strong cultures. The best cultures have leaders that really care about people, and they're working to sort of elevate them at work or at home, because it all goes together. We always say it's about bringing, life to work and bringing life, at home, work to life and life to work. So
Yeah.
that would be my answer. And again, that's sometimes it's two simple questions, but it
Yeah.
really gets sort of at that highest level executive team, do we have the right people being our people leaders? And then when it gets down to people leaders, sort of, I don't mind if they self-select. Maybe this isn't
Right.
that takes extra energy, that takes extra effort if you're in that kind of role, but it's necessary for strong cultures. Those role models, the people that are
Yeah.
living values, I think is necessary.
At smaller companies, whether it's a startup or a small business, even some, more medium-sized businesses, inevitably there's going to be overlap, right? There's going to be people whose maybe a core competency isn't necessarily that, being that people leader, but it will fall under their purview in some way. And so, and that just might be a matter of, how they're efficiently using, or inefficiently, depending on how you look at it, using their manpower, right, and their resources. And so if there's what happens when a leader doesn't understand these things, right? You're working with them, and you see that there was maybe a disconnect between what their job is, or at least how to execute that part of it with their people, and that it wasn't necessarily, something in their core skill set. So how do you give them the tools and the skills and confidence to do it right? Do you see that change is possible, or do you just expect them to self-select out?
Well, I believe in people, so of course I believe there's always hope. There's always time for change,
Yeah.
but it has to be a willingness, and there has to be a drive for an individual. I can't motivate you to do that. I would say, hey, my job as a leader of other people is not to motivate you. I'm a batteries kind of included kind of person, but I can open up doors, and
I'm
I
going
can.
to use that.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to use that. I've never heard anybody use that term before.
Oh, you must use it. It's so important. We're wasting a lot of energy and time if we're trying to charge somebody up to be a people leader or to lead in a culture sort of thing. That has to be you want the best. They have to believe in it, care about it that way. And I do think it can be growth. And you mentioned the word confidence. Everything we do in leadership development or helping leaders, it's all about confidence. There's not anything I've even talked about today that's not a confidence builder in an organization. Because for any role in an organization, the more confident you are, the better you are at it.
Yeah.
The better you are able to add your greatest value. So, but where we start with that, we don't believe in long leadership trainings, building confidence over 8 hours. It's how do you focus on small moments of leadership that you can, apply right away and build right into your habits that way. And, one of the small moments is that whole idea of looking at people as batteries included. That's a small sort of applicable thing. You could go down your 5 people that report to you and say, which ones have batteries included? Which it's right away, and you can
Yeah.
start coaching then right away about it. So we believe in those small moments. We call them moments that matter, and do a lot of work that way for people leaders. And I do think you can build somebody's confidence. A leader has to really understand themselves well. We call that our leadership training starts with the inner view.
Yeah.
That you have to really know yourself well before you can know others, and how you're wired across all 3 parts of your mind, around your beliefs, around belonging, all of those truths then around people. So, I think you can.
I love that, and I would agree 100%. Love the batteries included. Going to carry that with me in every conversation I have today forward. Shawn, do you ever feel, any folks ever come to you? Have you worked with any organizations where maybe there's some leaders who can't, or won't, simply not able to kind of get with the program? What do you tell an organization? How do you advise them when there is a leader who simply just doesn't get it? Would you say that there's ever any lost causes? Even though I don't like to use that word.
Yeah, I would second that motion about lost cause, although I like that word. There's something about lost cause that makes me get passionate. Like I want to do it. Can something be a lost cause? Okay,
Yeah.
that drives me into action. But if somebody said that to me, clients that say that, and I've actually had 2 clients in the last couple of weeks that have talked about underperformers, and my question back would be, what is your leadership model? And what I mean by that is, can somebody be a lost cause if they don't know what are the expectations, standards it means to be at your organization, to be a people leader? What does that
Yeah.
look like? What are you expecting from them? And then have you given them the opportunity and the learning, training, coaching, and growth to sort of build skills and confidence in that area? So uh, that's how I would respond. A lot of times they say, no, we don't do enough energy with that. We just, can't people just lead people and just do something on their own? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, some may have that sort of gut instinct and wire that way. Others may need a little support and help
Yeah.
that way. So I also think it ties back to how, you know, organizations focus on that touch point of performance management. you can label and put a lost cause or no hope on a certain person, but then I always want to say, what have you done? How have you, given them feedback on their performance? Are they aware that they're not doing well as a people leader? Because if they're not, they may think, hey, I'm meeting the standard that way. So definitely, I think you need to take some actions to remedy. But at the same time, it also ties back to their individual passion and drive. Sometimes people don't want to be in people leader roles. They might like the title of a people leader role. They might like the income of a people leader role, but they just don't have the capabilities or capacity to live up to what that might mean in an organization's leadership model.
You know, to pivot just a little bit, I have to ask about tech. Mustard Hub obviously is a tech company. What role do you see technology, all these various tools and platforms that companies are adopting? What role do you see the technology playing in building culture? Are they making a positive impact? Could all of these different tools be, impeding progress in a lot of ways?
Technology and culture. Wow. Sometimes I want it to be more of oh gosh, they go together really, really well. But sometimes it
Sometimes
can
they
be
do.
difficult because one thing, sometimes there's a missing a strong why or purpose for that alignment. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of sort of technology that looks good on the outside, but what is it going to solve for people or culture? Or what is it going to elevate around those touch points in people and culture? Because if you can find that connection, I think that's then I think it has some value there. Larger companies often use an enterprise solution that has built in, I might use the word clunky people and culture kind of things that way we find, because when we're working with organizations around touch points and they're looking at trying to simplify or clarify something, sometimes technology doesn't let them do that.
Right.
That it's kind of built in a certain way and it's not working for them. So um, I love technology that helps solve around these issues and that matches up with what they're trying to do.
What kind are you seeing as maybe the most valuable in this changing world of work, and really anything from culture development, performance management, any of these enterprise solutions that are sort of all-in-one types of things? What platforms have been valuable for Human Works 8 or your clients?
Yeah, we work with a lot of organizations that use a variety of platforms. We're not an expert in any of them, to be totally honest. We
Yeah.
help them find, okay, here's what you're trying to do around building your roadmap to elevate purposeful culture. Here's what we know of your technology solution, how it might help. And here's where there might be some disconnects. So, I would say there's three areas of where people are using technology improvements or that kind of thing. I think one is around communication, surveying, recognition. You know what I'm saying? That,
Mhm.
and I do think I, technology can help with that. We always say, hey, well, just having a central manner of doing that is important. If what is your way in your culture to communicate, to survey, to recognize? Sometimes that's just a robust intranet. You know what I'm saying? Hey, just get everybody to one place, and that's where the single source of truth is happening. But sometimes, depending on the organization, whether they're really remote and all over, sometimes an app or other technology can help with that. Have we found the perfect solution yet? No. That's why I was really interested in speaking with you and learning more about Mustard Hub, because it seemed a little more flexible, and maybe you can speak to that in addressing and helping organizations find their way into that. But that's one area, communication. The other would be performance management. You mentioned that. A lot of these enterprise solutions don't allow a renewed way of looking at performance management in a simple, clear way that fits right into what the technology says it needs, and it's too difficult. And then the last one would be training and development. Probably the one that sometimes I have the most challenge with, depending on where your workforce is, because I think people are a little tired of being trained online. They want a live experience. We're finding, and so I think for a skill or for learning a new capability, sometimes an online training is the way to go. And also it varies by people. I want to go back to the three parts of the mind. Some people do really well and like that online experience based on what works well for them. But there are many that, if I'm on that, I'm going to get bored and off that within moments or do double work as far as that goes. But I do think I do think technology can provide some ways in to solve some of these things. I don't know if I've heard of a solution that captures it all. And then I also think sometimes organizations need some direction on, do we need one solution, multiple solutions? What's the best path in? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think about it, as much as every individual being unique, so are businesses. Um, you talk about, you used the word flexible and solutions. Solutions are inherently built to solve, uh, a specific problem for, 80 to 90% of their, ICP, right? Or something around that. The reality is, right, you're right. There's no silver bullet. There's not one thing that's going to solve everybody's problem in every industry, with every size business, with every type of leader. It just doesn't exist. Um, my hope is that when you ask what my thought is, my hope that one day there is. That's my hope. But I think that flexibility is such an important and yet underrated part of software development. And I think that we're trying to solve, as an organization that is actively working in this space, right, to solve problems in the culture space, for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, et cetera. um it's I think it's it's something that we see. It's something that we see, that the need for flexibility, customization, right, so that it can fit your specific use case. And so, I mean, I everything that you just said, I fully support, 100%. And I think that in that space, right, in building solutions for these types of organizations, right, what I do is exactly what you do when you walk into a room with a new client. You listen hard and you ask a lot of questions, and hopefully you can use that information then to build a plan for this organization to find some success, right?
Yeah.
So on our side, obviously, listening really hard to all these organizations and asking a lot of questions, so we can make sure we're building things that can solve more problems.
Yeah, and I always say when it comes to that technology investment, I always like to tie it back. I think it's strongest with investing in people. That's what
Yeah.
technology is. It's not investing in culture necessarily, because sometimes that can be a little broad, but it's investing in people. That's what that cultural technology can do. It helps elevate people's lives, and makes it easier for people in an organization. So, yeah.
All of these tech platforms collect lots of data. They produce tons of analytics. Sometimes leaders don't even know what to do with them. It monitors and measures tons and tons of different things. Are there signals or indicators that leaders should be monitoring that are coming out of these platforms? I mean, how do you generally advise, against these things, for or against these things? Are there certain things you wish you could get from these tools that you don't see?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back. I always try to simplify and clarify. It's basics. How do you get to the you can have reports on everything up and down. I had a 25-year career in HR, and we had a lot of reporting that was coming out of our side. And I'm just like, okay, what do we do? The numbers are meaningless. I don't know how we act on that
Right.
number or what we do. So what I always try to do, and I encourage organizations to think about with whatever technology solution they're using, is what are those basic things, and how do you get your technology to report on that well, so that you can act on it well. So one thing is, do you have a technology tool that helps with surveying and what's working, what's not working, that you can address, and you can measure those things over time or annually, whatever that is. So That's a key communication and feedback
Yeah.
thing that I think technology can help with. And it's critical that way. And that's a basic. I also think we talked a lot about performance management, managing performance and reporting back on that at all levels, similar roles. That can be really helpful. And it's actionable work that you can do when it comes to performance. And then if I had, two other things, I need to report back on why people are leaving or why people aren't
Yeah.
joining. What are those
Yeah.
two things? And, those are actionable kind of coaching opportunities or intentional sort of changing in the direction of how we're doing something that can help. So that's what jumps to mind. Again, it's pretty basic, but sometimes organizations have a hard time with technology, even providing that well for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. And so aside from these tools, you know, tell me when you're working with an organization, you've gone through several of the steps of your framework. They've defined some of their values. They've identified leaders, right? There's, we've gone through and we've knocked out a bunch of these steps, right? We're taking action, right, to put into place all these different things that we need to do in order to improve our organization in whatever ways that we've decided we have. At that point in time, what are you generally advising your clients on what they need to be monitoring over time when it comes to their people? Are there elements of these dynamics that you suggest or recommend that they be monitoring just so these leaders can thrive and do right by all their folks?
There's a lot. What we try to do when we build or intentionally change something or give a new direction in a culture, let's just start with values. Well, those values need to be woven into how you are recognizing people. And
Yeah.
then you can sort of see what values are being recognized most, So you have to build that in. You don't want to make it extra. That's what I always say. It sort of has to be a natural part of your culture so that you don't have to do a report on it. You can see it pretty alive in just what
Mhm.
the process is, for example, in recognition. As far as communication, that touch point, we always say, hey, if you're going to set up, we always say when it comes to communication, can there be just what's the most efficient way? Can there just be one agenda, one meeting agenda that everybody uses, period? So that we know when we go into any meeting, we're all using the same agenda. It's
Yeah.
efficiency. You measure it, whether they're using it or not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's the best practice. So again, it's that simplification and clarification. And that agenda is going to look different to your and very unique based on business or what needs to be covered, but there's some elements that need to be there. So that's what we always say as far as monitoring. We want to try to help organizations build in that. It's almost like that self-monitoring happens because it's a sustainable organizational practice that they're seeing every day. So right away whether somebody's living that or not living it
Yeah.
because they're either doing it or they're not doing it.
Yeah. I love that. I have one more thing I always like to ask. I feel like we've covered so much ground. There's a lot of snippets here that I think people really need to know and to hear. But if you have an entrepreneur, you have an executive who asks you for your single most important piece of advice, right? You're on an elevator with them going to the top floor, and right before that door opens, right, you have just a moment to tell them what they can do better as a leader when it comes to their people. What do you tell
I would tell them to take a breath. That's what I would tell
them?
them.
I like how
I
you
don't
tied that back.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think people leaders breathe enough.
Yeah.
Um, they're in the moment. They think they have to have all the right answers. So that kind of leads to, one of the moments that I think is really important for people leaders. And I would tell that executive is that they need to that practice the pause idea, to take a moment to just be really aware of something before taking action. Sometimes I think people leaders think they have to solve it now. You need a moment. And that starts with a breath, and then that's really that pause. So that's what I would say to that before the elevator opened. And a lot of times that makes people go, "Oh, I was thinking." No, it comes down to, hey, we're living, breathing things, and we don't. I don't think we breathe well enough when we're leading in organizations.
Yeah.
How's that?
Shawn, I think that we have so many more amazing conversations ahead of us. I think it was perfect and
I
I
can't
loved
wait.
it. And
I
I
can't
really
wait.
appreciate you joining me today. Your insights are really incredible. I can't wait for everybody to see this.
Thanks for having me, and the best to you and everything you're doing there with Mustard Hub and in the culture technology sphere. And
Appreciate that.
again, thanks for having me on today.
Well, thanks to everyone else for tuning in to Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Please like and share this episode. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And be sure to visit mustardhub.com to learn about how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Sign up to get started for free while you're there. And until next time,